Alright everyone, it's time to discuss Count Dankula, of course YouTuber, fairly prominent, fairly well known, and his pug problem. You see, what happened is that Dankula, over in Scotland, we're talking the UK, so you've got hate speech laws, stuff that you thankfully don't have over here on this side of the pond, unless you're in Canada. Like, they don't care in Mexico either about my hate speech any more than here in the US, because, you've got freedom to say what you want to say unless you're, like, inciting violence. But what Dankula did is he taught his pug, apparently as a joke and to annoy his girlfriend. He taught his dog how to lift its paw when he said certain, like, Nazi phrases. And so he made a video of this, and then it wasn't something people reacted well over in Scotland. They're like, oh, he's inciting violence, he's gonna gas football stadiums. They're like making the, Lauren Southern was there, actually, I guess, covering the case, as an accredited legitimate journalist, which is like, it's the funniest part because I'm sure that they hate her, like, in a visceral fashion. Like, the UK's government must absolutely hate Lauren Southern. So she's there, and she's like, oh yeah, basically they're making the case that what he was saying is an indicator that he's going to go with his pug and gas football stadiums. And it kind of is, because the UK is like, oh, this is a noxious statement that was made. It's going to cause violence. It's like, come on, it's a joke with a dog. If this had taken place in the US, do you honestly think, number one, nobody would be prosecuted, it'd be unconstitutional to do so. Number two, no sane, sensible individual would think it was an incitement to violence. Absolutely not. Nobody would think it was even particularly likely to cause anyone to be bigoted. It's understood as a joke. It's like, thank goodness 4chan servers aren't over in the UK, I guess. It's ridiculous. The funny part is, even under their draconian anti-free speech system in Europe, it's not clear, in Scotland anyway, they're going to be able to make the charges stick. They're talking about incitement to violence. They're not even talking about specifically, well, it was something hateful. He's basically using the explanation, well, hey, this was a joke to piss my girlfriend off. It's basically, I trained my dog as a joke. That would be what a sane, I guess, rational individual, a rational human being would surmise. The thing is, the people who made the original complaint had to have been, like, way, way out in left field. Like, we're talking, basically Scotland out of the UK because oorah, but UK not out of EU because, evil and isolationist, I guess. Some of the hypocrite crowd, maybe. Scottish independence on a moral basis aside, probably the kind of people who brought the complaint. And they're like, oh, the Crown alleges. It's very funny to see, like, the language that they use over in a technical quasi-monarchy, a constitutional monarchy of sorts, a parliamentary system or whatever the fuck they have. And it's not even clear what the Queen can do anymore. I think she can barely walk, so it's not necessarily the greatest issue. But this is just another symptom of the problem we've been having, which is that people who aren't cued in necessarily to the ins and outs of some of the subcultures on the internet, they look at what's said, or they look at what's done maybe outside of that, and technically is a form of echo chamber. And like, you've got a YouTube creator subculture. And by the way, I see a block emerging within the YouTube creator subculture. I should probably cover that sometime. It's sort of a link between the identitarian uprising, the libertarian movement, even like the social justice wars. There's a block forming that's sort of an alternative to them. I personally, by the way, see this as a very positive thing, and I'll have to throw that idea at several other people that I think are part of that block, because I know I am at this point. The problem is that from the outside looking in, people don't quite get it. Like Holt, who's now, he's got Christensen after him. I've been after him because, he's saying stupid shit about YouTube, oh, YouTube is indulging Nazis, people are making money off of white nationalists and all this stuff, and it's just totally wrong. It's like totally Andy Warski gets defamed by like some person on Medium.com and all this weird shit. And it's the funniest stuff ever. But the thing is, the reason why people are doing that, it's not even necessarily some progenitor malice that they happen to have. It's just they don't understand the culture. They don't understand the concept if they're not like rabid YouTubers, like original gangsta, old era YouTubers, they probably don't remember when YouTube primarily was stuff like what Count Dankula posted. Honestly, that was basically 2007, 2008 YouTube. It was stuff that was meant to shock and disgust, video of animals rotting. There was a time lapse of a rotting pig on there, and it's like swarm with bugs. There's grindcore. There's the most hideous black metal titles you can think of. People doing all sorts of crazy. You're taking salvia and everything else under the sun. The reason why it was posted is back then that was basically the clickbaitiness. Now, of course, it's fake news stories, which are still more real than what you see on CNN or apparently in the Scottish media or a BBC or something. But Dankula, what he did wouldn't have been considered abnormal 10 years ago on YouTube. It shouldn't be considered abnormal now. It's just somebody making a joke, having fun. I understand that. Any of his fans understand that. Everyone else, who's part of YouTube creator culture understands it. Like, hey, this is kind of funny. This cute little pug, and it's doing like Nazi salute stuff. Okay, it's funny. No, none of us may think it's incitement to violence because we're not brain dead. But there are people who aren't part of that who don't realize the specific catchphrases that he's using have an internet connotation to them at this point and are a form of meme. But they don't get that. They don't know anything about memetics. They don't know anything about internet culture. They just want to censor everything. They take everything totally literally. Because they're boring. They're normies. Like the older generation that sort of runs the show and they make the rules and make the laws. They're all boring individuals. Like I have to assume none of them use 4chan or Reddit. None of them even probably YouTube at this point, other than they go throughout YouTube and they look up dirty words or noxious phrases to see who's still loyal. No, this person kind of sounds like they might be in the UK and they said the wrong word. We'd better find it. We'd better subpoena YouTube for the IP so we can go bust down their door at midnight and drag them off like the criminal scum they are. That's how like Germany and the UK appear to be operating. Meanwhile, in Eastern Europe, they don't really have this problem so much. I think at this point, free speech, oddly enough, is more common in former commie bloc nations than it is in Western Europe, supposedly like the cradle of modern liberty and civilization, which of course is bullshit, but that's sort of how they cast themselves. We're the enlightened Western European governments. We're Swedish, we're English, French, and German stuff. And it's not enlightened. It's the opposite of enlightened. You're going backwards in time. You've achieved the 1800s again already when it comes to the concept of liberty, and you're going back even further. I hope people in Western Europe realize their futures are being pissed away by governments that do literally the opposite of everything that they should be doing. They should be promulgating more liberty and letting in fewer people who won't assimilate, who have a tendency not to assimilate because they say, my home country was bombed by the French. Now I'm a refugee in France. Oh yeah, I think that I'm going to feel just fine and right at home around all these people who are represented by the same government that, bombed my town into smithereens. I don't think it works that way. I'm sorry, that just doesn't make sense. They're too worried. They're not worried about that. They're not worried about anything else in the world other than, some citizen in our country said something offensive. Some person over in the U.S. has too much liberty, says offensive things, and our citizens can watch it. Oh no, don't they now in the U.K. prosecute people just for watching content that would be illegal for a British person to make? Or was it Germany or one of those countries, I think either was proposing or had already passed such a thing. I mean, it's ludicrous, totally ridiculous. I think they were going after certain types of pornography too, perfectly consensual, otherwise legal stuff too. In the UK, I think they're planning. They have that great block on porn now. You have to opt in to even watch it. It's weird shit like that. It's so stupid. You gotta micromanage. You gotta get into people's homes. From now on, every toilet will have a camera inside of it to make sure that your turds are politically correct. To make sure that they're the right consistency and size and color. If they're too big, you get taxed for excessive turd release because you might have to do a second flush. I half expect that some crazy-ass law like that's going to be passed in some Western European nation at any given time. And meanwhile, they'll act like some random YouTuber is like an enemy of the people for having a good time online when they don't even know a good time when it hits them in the face. Their idea of a good time is they get drunk and go off to some other country where they can actually do what they want to do. They take their vacation outside of Western Europe. They go to a commie block country and go solicit a prostitute or something. They'll go to North Africa and do drugs. They'll come to the United States, and while they're here, they'll actually watch somebody speak, and it'll be like a real refreshing moment for them, because the person's at liberty to say what they actually want to say and don't have to bottle it up until they do get violent. So I think that the trial against Count Dankula is ridiculous. I think the UK's government is ridiculous. I think that the people of the United Kingdom are ridiculous in a way for tolerating it. They really shouldn't. They should be putting enormous amounts of pressure. I see almost no pressure, rather, being put on the government there to back off and allow people to be part of the greater, more liberty-loving part of the world that, happens to be generally in control of the internet. Thank goodness it's not held by the European Union. That's about all. Peace out.